Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to Todd Clint's SharePoint Netcast number 149, one episode away from the big 150. Tonight's Netcast was recorded live Monday, March 11th, 2013, in my basement, the way the netcasting gods intended. And also, the netcasting gods were helped by the folks at Rackspace, my employer, Rackspace, in my red Rackspace cup. They also provided the wardrobe for tonight's netcast, but they provided the sheet that's behind me and the microphone I'm speaking on and one of the webcams that I'm talking into and all of that beautiful blistering bandwidth that you guys are downloading this on. So if you like the netcast, and really even if you don't, but you have some hosting needs, go to Rackspace.com. And if you want to find out about their SharePoint offerings, go to Rackspace.com/SharePoint and see what Rackspace has to offer. And then please tell them not to fire me too. That would be awesome if you could do that too. All right, on to the production notes. So episode 148 we recorded live in San Francisco last week, and that was a blast. There was 20 people in the audience. They asked questions. They all gave Shane a wet willy after we got done recording. It was awesome. Had a good time with that. But because I was out all last week and then busy this weekend, I didn't get everything rendered and published until this weekend. And so the RSS feed is up and updated. The blog post will go up maybe tonight or tomorrow. But that was all because I was gone, and I don't render everything on my traveling laptop, and it's kind of tough to render over the internet. But as always, if you go to toddclint.com/netcast, on the far right-hand side, there's a link that says Netcast Download Directory. If you click that, it'll take you right to the directory where all these netcasts are at, so you don't have to wait for me to put it on, RSS or anything like that. You can just download them and get them that way. So thanks to everybody that was in the live audience last week, and all you guys that joined on the stream. Shane had the chat room and all that up on the monitor so everybody in the audience could watch. It was a pretty good time. Had a blast. For the second week now in a row, I'm using the dark blue backdrop behind me. I think that's still pretty good. I think we're going to go something like that. I might change the lighting a little bit to make things not quite so dark. But I think I'm going to stick with the backdrop. I think it looks better than the wall and the window and all that. And Eric Harlan doesn't like it, so now I got to keep it. It's just how that works. If he doesn't like it, then I know it's good. But if you have any feedback on that, different colors, that kind of stuff, give me a shout. Let me know what you think. The interesting thing is Eric Harlan changed his color in IRC to roughly the same color as my backdrop, so that's kind of nice. Another production note: had somebody posed a question to me a couple days ago about setting up email alerts, and this is something I've talked about this in the past, but I've not decided if I thought that there was enough demand for it, I guess. So what they were kind of suggesting was that I would send out email alerts for different things. Like when I published a netcast, I would send out an email alert. Maybe when I went live, like this thing right now, I would send out an email alert. Those kind of things. So I don't know if that's something that you have interest in. Leave a note in the comments box or send me a tweet at Todd Clint or an email, todd.clint@rackspace.com. I've thought about doing it. But I don't know if it's going to be of value to anybody. And there would be some overhead for me just making sure that people got unsubscribed when they wanted to, things like that. So it's not, not trivial, but if there's demand for it, I would do it. But I know people have said, oh, I missed your netcast last night. I forgot it was on. I've been doing it at 8:30 on Monday nights, forever. Yeah, Bruce in the chat room's already worried about me spamming him. So that's the kind of things that I'm curious about. But if that's got any value to you, let me know, and that's something that we can do. Now, as the folks in the chat room are very, very good at reminding me, email is old. Email is what our grandparents used out on the farm to talk to the cows while they were plowing the field. Yeah, not everybody uses email. That's why I tweet some of this stuff out. And Lynn has mentioned that people could set up a calendar alert. Yes, I would think that too. But we all work different ways. We all have different workflows. Some people just work out Outlook all day. Some people do tweets. Some people, this and that. So again, part of this whole thing of putting it on YouTube and all that stuff is just to make it as easy for everybody to use it. And that's kind of what the thought was on this. And the fact that this one person sent me an email about it makes me think that that person would like it, like an email. So at least one person would, and you know who you are. I forgot to ask you if it was okay if I used your name. So that's why I didn't mention you. But so think about that. If you got any feedback on it, let me know. Yes, everybody in the chat room's like, email's old. It's all, it's terrible. It's what the cavemen used. Yeah. I hear you. Okay, so now on to the topics. The first one is last week was SP TechCon. As always, a great time. This was the first one of the year is always in San Francisco. And the second one is in Boston, so this is the first one. And Jack in the chat room said instead of email, maybe I could just call everybody. So yes, I will call all of you and let you know that I'm about ready to go live. We might be a little late, or I might have to call a little early, but that's hysterical. Anyway, so last week was SP TechCon out in San Francisco, and I was out there for that. And it was a pretty good time. I mean, as always, it's always SharePoint content all the time. And so it was a good time for all that. Got to meet a few new people. Got to hang out with some new friends. Shane and I did 3 sessions. We did an install session, and then we did 2 just general administration sessions. And it was good. We basically for the administration ones just answered questions. I mean, we had a bunch of slides, and we went through that. But it was a lot of stuff from the audience, people asking things. A bunch of people have installed SharePoint 2013 already, and curious about what they've done right, what they've done wrong. And so this was a big part of that, was just reminding people what they've done well or not well. And so it was a good session. We're trying to decide if we want to do more of those kind of things and do webinar type stuff. And I think some of the things that we did this week at SharePoint SP TechCon are things that we're probably going to record, do live as webinars, and maybe put them online so you can watch them, because there seems to be some demand for that. So that was a good time. But all in all, SP TechCon is good. The next SP TechCon in Boston, and it is August 11th through the 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th, I think. And so that's I'm looking forward to that. I've submitted some stuff. I haven't heard whether I'm going to be in or not, but that's the plan. We'll do it out there in Boston in August. So a few folks have asked me, if they could only go to one SharePoint conference this year, which one should they go to? And I normally tell folks that the SharePoint conference, if there is one, is the way to go. But here we are in March and haven't heard hide nor hair of a SharePoint conference from Microsoft this year. And I know some of you guys have budgets that you need to spend, and if you don't spend it, you lose it, which is sad. And so I guess my answer used to be, let's wait for the SharePoint conference. Now my answer is slowly working towards SP TechCon in August is not a bad choice. So if you don't have anything planned like that, start thinking about that, and you go to sptechcon.com. Mark in the chat room is saying it'd be nice if they said yes or no. Yes, that would be delightful if anybody had any clue whether that was going to happen or not. But right now, as far as I know, nobody knows. And a couple of people are saying they've emailed the conference folks and nobody's talking. I can tell you, having been pretty deeply involved with a few of these SharePoint conferences, they are tremendous undertakings. They are amount of work that you can't imagine, and the stress and all that is terrible. And I know that when SP TechCon is done, the last thing when SharePoint conference is done, the last thing those people want to think about is doing it all again. So we had like an 18-month span between one, and I know that was just so those guys could get their sanity back. So I don't blame them if that's what's going on now. But we got some folks shaking some trees and all that. So if anybody finds out, let me know. But tentatively right now, if you don't have a SharePoint conference planned, SP TechCon is probably your best bet in August. Yeah. So, and Mark in the chat room, 10,000 people at the last one. It's a huge event. It had Bon Jovi at it. It was gigantic. speaking of gigantic events, and this was the giganticest, last week I had the distinct honor and pleasure of being one of the guest hosts on Windows Weekly. This was pretty damn cool for me. I was pretty excited about this. So for those of you that aren't aware, Leo Laporte used to be on a TV network called Tech TV. He had a couple of TV shows. I can't remember if they were Screensavers and Call for Help, I think is what they were called. Tech TV sort of imploded, and he got out of that, but he was a radio guy. And so he started up his own podcasting network, and he called it Twit, This Week in Tech. And so he started it out of a little cottage in Petaluma, California, just up the road from San Francisco, and has sort of turned it into a little podcasting empire. He calls them netcasts because he doesn't want it to sound like they're Apple specific. That's actually where I got the name for mine, calling it a netcast. And so he's kind of been, I've been watching him for years. I watched him on Tech TV. I've been watching him on the Twit stuff. And he was part of the big inspiration for this whole show. It was kind of cool. So in January, Lynn in the chat room and I were at the New Media Expo in Las Vegas, and he was there. He was doing the keynote with some other stuff. So I just went up and introduced myself to him. I've showed that picture before, right over here. So here's Leo and I at the New Media Expo, and when I talked to him, I said, "Hey, I'm going to be out in California in March in San Francisco for a conference." And he said, "Hey, the studio's open. You should come up and visit. It'd be awesome. We'll show you around. You'll have a good time." And so I thought, okay, that's not a bad idea. I'll do that. It just so happened that SP TechCon was Sunday through Wednesday. Windows Weekly records on Thursday. So I thought, hey, I'll go out for a recording of Windows Weekly. And so I made all my plans, and I did that. One of the co-hosts of Windows Weekly is a friend of mine, Paul Thurrott. We know each other. We both do writing for Penton Magazine. I think he's a full-time employee there. I do some stuff on and off. But at Tech Eds and Connections and that kind of stuff, him and I are always kind of traveling in the same circles, and we hang out. So when all this happened, I shot him an email and said, hey, I'm going to be up there on March 7th. Just to say, hey, if any SharePoint stuff comes up, don't be afraid to have him turn the camera on me, because that'd be pretty cool. I've done this netcasting thing for a while, so I'm not going to freak out on camera or anything like that. But it'd be pretty cool just to get on there and say, hey, on the deal. So that was pretty cool. Then a week and a half ago, when they were recording Netcast 301, the one before I was on there, they got done with the Netcast. And I was in the chat room, and I put a thing. I was like, "Hey, I'll see you guys. I'll see you guys next week. I'm going to be up at the Brick Twit House." And Leo got done. He said, "Oh, looks like Todd Clint's going to be here next week." And Paul says, "I was just going to say that. He's a friend of mine. He's a SharePoint guy." And Leo said, "SharePoint guy? Well, that's great. We should put him on camera." And Paul said, "That's what I was just going to say again. You should put him on camera." And then Mary Jo Foley, who is the other guest host, said, "And I'm not going to be here next week." She was up in Redmond doing some stuff. So things kind of fell together. It worked out pretty well. So I showed up there. I took the bus up to Petaluma, walked to the studios there, the Brick Twit House, and got there, 45 minutes before Windows Weekly normally starts. Watched a little bit of the tech news today, looked around, took some pictures, that kind of stuff. And then Leo showed up, and I, introduced myself to him, and he's like, "Oh yeah, that's right. We were going to put you on camera." So they moved everything out of his office and put it out of the table, studio, and I ended up being a full-fledged member of the Windows Weekly crew last week, episode 302, and it was a great time. We talked about Windows, we talked about Office 365, and just all kinds of stuff. And like I said, I already knew Paul. Him and I got along, but I just fell in. Leo was pretty cool, pretty easy to get along with. And we just had a blast. So that's Windows Weekly episode 302, and called Five Cokes and a Pepsi, talking about how Microsoft has to advertise other browsers besides their own. But so that was a good time. And when we got done, I don't know if Leo was just buttering my biscuits or not, but he's like, "Hey, make sure you give me your card before you leave. If we ever need another fill-in, we'll give you a shout." Asked me what other things I know about. They were getting ready to record iPad Weekly right after that. He's like, "Do you know anything about iPads? You want to jump in here?" And I'm like, "I've never touched an iPad in my life. I can't be of much help." But that was really cool. and just getting to sit in that. I've been watching Windows Weekly for several years now, so I never thought I would be one of the gang on that. That was pretty nice. So had a good time there. So if you get a chance to check it out, you can go to twit.tv and look for Windows Weekly, and it's episode 302, 5 Cokes and a Pepsi. As if that wasn't enough, after I got done recording and they walked over and started recording iPad Weekly, I was asking, I'd been talking to one of the production guys before that, and I'm like, hey, I would just love to see how all of this works. And the guy's like, all right, well, we got this thing, we can show you a couple things. And Leo's like, nah, he's a VIP, show him everything. So I got like an hour and a half tour of how they do everything there for all those things. And it was really cool. So it's actually 2 stories. Well, it's a ground story and a basement. And the ground floor is where all the studios are at. And they've got like 6 or 7 studios kind of set up in the corners and all that kind of stuff. So if you look at the picture where the studio that I was at with the table, that's on the exterior wall. You can see a truck outside, and the main door is kind of behind me there. And then they've got like the iPad Today studio was just to the right of that, and then they had the Tech News Today. The tables were off to the side, and then Leo had an office and all that. And they've got 40-some cameras, I don't remember how many, hanging from, so they've got girders in the ceilings and set up. They've got cameras hanging from everywhere, and they're just regular consumer cameras. They're Canon Vixia HFG10s or something, just hanging everywhere. And then they've got rolling monitor carts with cameras on them also that they roll around. So 40-some cameras, and then any number of computers. When they ended up showing me their video switcher later on, and it's got 75 video inputs, and it's full. And so they're trying to figure out what to do as they expand more and hook more things up, because they can't hook up more than 75 video sources. But it was pretty cool where I was sitting. Straight ahead was a camera and 2 monitors. One of them had the chat room on it in huge font so we could see it, and then the other one had whatever they were broadcasting. And then off to my left was another camera for me to look straight into, and then above that was a monitor that had either Paul's feed or the broadcast feed, so I could see that. And then I had my laptop with the chat room on it, and so it was just cool how. And then they have a big rotating control studio sort of that has all the camera inputs and all the computers and all that they can move around in a circle, so whatever studio they're recording from, it's facing that studio. And so that guy was doing all the switching, and actually if you watch that episode, they show that studio when the guy talks about something, that the guy's name is Alex Gumpel. They show that, and it's just amazing how all that worked. So then Alex Gumpel was the guy that gave me the tour, took me down in the basement and showed me all their networking stuff and all their video stuff, and it is just amazing, all the things that they have. And just all the amount of data that they move, the amount of bandwidth that they need to get video in and out of there, the amount of storage that they need to store everything. And it was, I mean, they buy 2 terabyte drives by the box to do their backups. They've got a tricorder that they record the stream off of, and then just as a 2 terabyte drive gets full, they pull it off, and they've got a whole stack of them over there that are dated. It is just crazy. They and they're never done. I mean, every time they upgrade something, they already know that it's going to be full. Excuse me, TriCaster. You're right, Eric, not tricorder, TriCaster. My mistake. And so they were showing me a new Dell server they bought, and it had, I think, 32 or 36 terabytes of raw drive space on it. Now, of course, that's going to get rated and split up and all that. But he was saying they just put that in a couple of months ago, and they're already planning for the next thing that will augment that, because it's going to be full in however many weeks. It's just amazing. So they do 20-some shows every week, and and it was so that was really cool. I got some ideas on improvements that I can make here, and so hopefully once I talk to my sugar daddy and see what happens with that, we'll get to see some of those. But had a blast, great afternoon. If any of you guys are ever in San Francisco, they've got a URL that you can go to that gives you all the instructions on how to get everywhere. The email address, just shoot them an email and let them know you're going to be there. And they were really great. They were really great. So had to do it. No, Eric, I will not make a sound like a tricorder on air for you. I'm sorry. That's against my contractual obligations. I won't do that. But anyway, please check out Windows Weekly number 302. And if you liked it, if you thought I did a good job, don't be afraid to tweet Leo and Paul and tell them so that they will know that everybody didn't hate it, that I was on there. All right, so if you guys want to talk about a little SharePoint, probably squeeze a little bit of that in. First thing is, last week or the week before, Microsoft released the language packs for SharePoint 2013 Foundation. Couple of notes about this. This is only the Foundation language packs. The language packs for server have not been released yet. The server language packs that you see out there are only for the preview, and I don't know if you put those on RTM, if they'll even install, or if they'll explode, or if you install Spanish, it'll really install Farsi just to mess with you. I don't know any of that. I would not even ever try that. But the ones that came out last week were Foundation only. So if you've got a Foundation farm and you want to put some language packs on, it's all there. And at the bottom of that, if you read through, they've got instructions on how to install it and uninstall it and all that stuff. So that's kind of good. Word of caution, though, do not install language packs unless you're going to use them. Promise me that. Because if any of you guys go out and install language packs just to be a joker, and I find out you did it because I talked about it, I'm not going to talk about language packs anymore. You've been warned. The thing about language packs is they complicate things a lot because now you need to patch the language packs. If SharePoint 2013 follows suit with SharePoint 2010, the CUs will have the internationalization, all the language packs in them, but the service packs will not. And so that's added complication. And then depending on how third-party things you buy bolt in, they may or may not work very well. And and when you run your CUs, when you run that config wizard thing at the end, it has to do more stuff. So I'm not against installing a language pack if you're going to use it. Like if you're up in Canada and you have to do business with those folks in Quebec, they get all fussy if French isn't there. So install French. That's fine. Do that. But don't install French and German and Swahili and all that if you're in Iowa and you don't talk to anybody. If nobody within 1,000 miles of you speaks another language, don't install all the language packs. They complicate things, and they do just, they feel kind of bolted on weird. They don't, I don't know, they just cause problems. They're kind of scary. So don't install a language pack unless you need to. If down the road you decide that you need a language pack, you can always install it later. There's no penalty for not installing it right away as soon as you find it. So be very judicious with that. But if you do need them, the SharePoint 2013 Foundation language packs are out. And right now, a bunch of people in the chat room are talking about language packs. Jared, I think he just broke down into tears. We haven't heard anything from him for a couple of minutes. He might just be sobbing in a corner. And just, you got to be careful. Now, we do have some Canadians in the chat room, and so they do have to have the French language pack. That's cool. That's that's fine. But just don't install them if you don't need them. And if your boss tries to tell you to install it just because somebody might need it somewhere, I'll write you a note. I'll tell them that it's not a best practice. It's just, they're there, but be careful. So this is another story. I was working with a customer today. This is one of my more fun ones. And this customer, I've been working with them for a while, and they're pretty sharp. And so when they call, when they have problems, it's not easy stuff. It's always hard, challenging things, and this was one, a very uncommon, easy win for me. Normally they have a list of like 10 things that are broken, and I don't know anything about any of them, and we have to fight through them and all that kind of stuff. So one of them, the guy says, we've got a process that runs every 5 minutes. It's a PowerShell script that adds some metadata to some things. They import some things, and then they need to make sure those things have metadata. And so they've got a PowerShell script that walks through, applies the correct metadata. Probably not the perfect use of a PowerShell script, but pretty good. Not bad. I looked at the script. It's got functions and all that kind of stuff. It was pretty good, pretty well thought out. And I'm like, so what's the problem? This all looks pretty good. He's like, it takes forever to run. He said, when I open up PowerShell, man, it can take like a minute or two for the PowerShell prompt to come in. It just takes forever. And that slows things down because this thing runs like every 5 minutes, and it ends up trying to walk all over itself, and it's just not working very well. What can we do to get this thing to go faster? And I'm like, oh, I think I know this one. I'm like, do your servers have access to the internet? Like complete unfettered access to the internet? He's like, no, my servers don't have any access to the internet. I'm like, score! Yes! I knew this one. Starting in SharePoint 2007 with STS ADM and continuing through to SharePoint 2010 and SharePoint 2013, whenever you start up STS ADM or PowerShell, they go out to the internet to check for Microsoft Certificate Revocation List. And this and this is because both of them can have modules plugged into them, and those modules can be signed. And so before they run these modules, they want to make sure that the certificate for the module hasn't been revoked. So when you fire it up, they go out, they pull down the latest certificate revocation list, or CRL. Since this guy's server didn't have access to the internet, they were trying to go out kind of at the OS level and hit that CRL, and it wasn't working. It was trying some more, and it was timing out, and it was getting kind of ugly. So there's a couple of blog posts that I pointed him to check that out. There's a few things that you can do to fix that. You can go to your hosts file on your SharePoint servers and point crl.microsoft.com to localhost so that they just immediately error out. You can, there's some registry settings that you can tweak that tell it to not make that check, that kind of stuff. And the blog posts that I've mentioned take care of all that. But the other thing for SharePoint 2013, I guess in SharePoint 2010, is the secure token service also does that because it's got certificates from trusted providers, that kind of thing, and it tries to check that too. So if your machines, if your servers don't have access to the internet, read those and find out if that might help us speed things up. So yeah, so Jared in the chat room is saying that the logins took a minute because of that whole thing, because the security token service was looking for that CRL. So it's the easy ones, like they say, a broken clock is right twice a day. Though with daylight saving time, I don't know if that still applies. It's all very confusing. But I got an easy win with this one. Okay, so this story happened, I think, a week and a half ago. It was before SP TechCon. Was talking to a customer, and they were having some problems with IIS 7.5, which is the Windows 2008 R2 version. They were trying to make some, I don't know, like some shortcuts to some of their long, they were all path-based URLs. They're trying to make some shortcuts to some of the longer URLs by adding / something at the end that would redirect them to the longer URL. And they had done it with SharePoint, I forget, one of the older ones, and they kind of had some luck doing it with this one, but they were having a hell of a time. They had added a new server to their farm, and they were trying to reproduce all this, and they were having problems. So the way that they were doing it was with the redirect module in IIS, and then you can go into IIS and you can set all these things up. You can set these rules up to say, redirect this and send it to that, and redirect this and send it to that. And they were having problems getting all that done on their new server because the setting was in IIS, so SharePoint wasn't replicating it when they pushed it out, when they added it to the farm. So we fought this for a while. They had fought it for a while before they called us, and I had not ever done it with IIS 7.5 or IIS 8, whichever one it was we were working on. But figured it out, took 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever. Figured it out, got one done. And they had 60 or 70 of them, I forget. So I'm like, okay, so there's one. Now you guys need to do another one. Let's have you do it, and I'll watch you do it. And the guy's like, man, this is going to take forever. And I'm like, yeah, and don't forget, every time you add a new server to your farm, you got to do all this by hand again. That's going to kind of stink. And the guy's like, this is horrible. There's got to be a better way to do this. And I'm like, well, gentlemen, turns out there is. And then, just in time for that, this came out. So on my blog, I have all these short URLs. So you can go to toddclint.com/edit hosts, and it takes you to my blog post on editing your host file. Or you can go to toddclint.com/netcast149, and it will take you to the blog post on this netcast, for instance. And so that's actually at, /blog/list/post.axpx, ID, whatever. So I've got all that on my website. And the way that I have got that is with a piece of software called SharePoint Short URL from SharePointSense.com. And this was kind of serendipitous because right around the time that them and I were talking about this, my review of that product came out on SharePointReviews.com. And so I was able to just point them to it. But what the software does is exactly what it sounds like. You can go to anything inside of SharePoint, a post or a wiki or any kind of page or any document or any of those kind of things, and you can add a short URL to it. And the beauty of it is that it saves it all in a SharePoint list. So as soon as you add another web front end to your farm, it pushes out the solution, it goes to that list, and there's nothing to do when you add new servers. So that piece of software was like $1,000, something like that. And for these guys, it was going to save them hours of work and would have probably saved them some money of having to call me too. So if you want to have these convenient short URLs, go to SharePointSense.com. Go to SharePointReviews.com and check out my review first. But then go to SharePointSense.com and check it out. They've got a demo version, I think. They also have a version for SharePoint 2013 that's coming out. I've got a copy of the beta, but I haven't played with it yet. But great software. I'm a big fan of the software. I can't imagine doing my blog without it. It's good stuff. Okay, so another shout out I wanted to give today was Brian LaLancette, who couldn't bother to join us tonight. Excuse me, another one of my Canadian friends. And he is the author of the AutoSP installer. He recently updated that and addressed a bunch of problems, not a bunch of problems, a bunch of rough edges that have been found since SharePoint 2013 came out. So over the last couple of weeks, we've talked about like the SharePoint index location, the permissions issue, things like that. Those are all fixed in there. So I linked the changelog for that, but go out there, check that out. I can't say enough good things about the AutoSP installer. If you're setting up test environments or any of those kind of things, you got to check it out. It's amazing stuff. Brian has just done crazy stuff. I can't say enough about it. But check that out. Download it, take it for a spin. Brian would love to hear what you have to say about it. So Bruce in the chat room, Bruce Albany, asked me to add this. He was proud. He came up with this solution for doing some really simple charting things in SharePoint 2013 off of list data. And he wanted I was talking to him on Twitter the other night, and he was asking me if I would give him a shout out for this. So here's your shout out. He's using the content by search display templates that are new to SharePoint 2013 and taking some content from a list and making pretty quick and easy charts for that. So I know the content by search web part is something that is new, and not a lot of folks have played with it yet. So walkthroughs like this from Bruce, just kind of say, hey, here's how you do it, here's the things that you add, are kind of nice. They're kind of helpful to kind of get you thinking about how to use this new functionality. So shout out to Bruce for that. And Bruce is coming, dialing up all the way from Australia, where he's at right now. I had it on my other computer. It's like 1 o'clock in the afternoon, something like that. He's down in Sydney, so thanks for jumping in, Bruce, and thanks for writing that up. I appreciate it. Okay, so here's another one. This really doesn't have a lot to do with SharePoint, but I thought it was kind of cool because it's something that I have dealt with myself. And this is from Lynn. Lynn Dye. She's in the chat room right now. And this is how to use your custom domain. So if you were the proud owner, say, of toddclint.com or ericharlanstinks.com, two that are in my stable of domains, you can use your custom domain and use Outlook.com and set up like a domain account, and you can then set up multiple accounts. You get SkyDrive accounts with all this, and it's really kind of a cool deal. Now, Lynn sent this to me yesterday or the day before. I can't remember. I haven't had a chance to look at it yet. But this is pretty crazy. So I think this is one of those things that they've got to kind of combat the Google for domains or Gmail for domains stuff that's come out. I don't know if you guys have noticed, Microsoft and Google are kind of kicking dirt at each other, and it looks like this is kind of their answer to it. So you get the customized email in the Outlook.com interface, which is really pretty nice. You can point Outlook 2013 at it to get the full thing. You get calendars and all that kind of stuff. And then you also get 7 gig with SkyDrive, so you've got space with that. And since you're using SkyDrive, you get the Office web apps. So I mean, it's very much all together. So so Lynn's saying that Google doesn't offer this for free anymore. I didn't realize that. So this is one of those things, kind of cool. We're all very Microsofty. I might set this up for one of my domains just to play with it a little bit. I'm hosting all of my email at Rackspace, so I don't have this particular need right now, but I might play with it just to kick it around a little bit. So this is pretty cool. Thanks, Lynn, for bringing that up. That's kind of nice. And finally, those of you that are in the chat room already know about this, but since I've moved to Ustream, I've made some changes here in the last few months. And in the chat room, Mark Miller just jumped in of End User SharePoint fame. He and I and Lynn were all at the New Media Expo, and part of the change, well, most of the changes that I've made since January were inspired by sessions that I went in there, or vendors that I talked to there, just discussions I had with other podcasters and bloggers and all that. Moving to Ustream was one of those things. I saw their Ustream producer software and saw some of the other capabilities and got pretty excited about moving to Ustream. It's worked out pretty well. Been pretty happy with it. But one of the things now that I can do with Ustream is there are other ways to consume it. Stickcam was kind of locked in and you couldn't do much with it, but Ustream is kind of a big deal. And so a couple of weeks ago, a couple of folks figured out that they've got these little Roku boxes. Well, they didn't figure that out. They already knew that. But they figured out that Roku has a Ustream client. And so they can fire up the Ustream client on their Roku box, dial up my Netcast, and watch it on TV. Now, why in the world anybody want to do that? I don't even think my mom would do that. But anyway, the capability's out there. So I don't have a Roku box, so I couldn't set up directions or anything. But Jared Mottfest from the chat room, he's been pretty popular tonight, wrote the whole thing up and he blogged it. And you can get to that. It's Jared Mottfess, JaredMattfess.wordpress.com, and he's got a blog post titled "Watching Todd Quinn's Netcast on Your Roku." And so, for all of you folks that have Roku boxes and want to watch this, not on your laptops or whatever, Jared's walked through that. Now, again, I don't have a Roku box, so I can't test it. So for all we know, Jared's instructions are going to bring you up some Rick Astley videos. I have no idea. Can't guarantee that it's going to work. But I know a couple other people have done it, so it can be done. So that's good. Thanks to Jared for that. I'll have the link in my show notes, and I'll probably put a link to it maybe on the Netcast page too, because that's kind of cool. That's one of the things. I bought a new TV a couple of years ago, and it had all the smart apps stuff in it. Yes, and I said smart app, not the thing that my mom always called me when I was a kid. But they had like CacheFly and all that kind of stuff, and I thought, man, that would really be cool if someday my Netcast shows up on here. And now it looks like it can, so that's kind of neat. Now I know that my wife is upstairs watching something other than me, so we don't have to worry about that. But thanks anyway. now Jared's mad because of the Rickroll. Yeah, sorry about that, Jared. Your secret's out. So that is the bulk of the SharePoint content. Now we're going on to the promotion. So a couple of things I guess we'll talk about. This kind of dovetails into this. I finally got my results back from taking my SharePoint exams. So if you took the SharePoint 2013 admin beta exams, hopefully you've gotten a couple of these in the mail, and hopefully yours say the same thing that mine did. Result, pass. Aww, love it. So that was pretty cool. Glad to get those back. Yes, as with all of the results I get in the mail, it came back positive. Please call my doctor. So that was cool. So now, kind of my next exam to study for is to upgrade my SharePoint 2010, whatever I was, MSITP, to the Windows 2012 version. And there's an upgrade exam for that. And from what I've heard, it's kind of a bugger. I've talked to a couple of people that have taken it, and they've not had complimentary things to say about it. So that will be the next exam that I take. After that exam has been beaten into submission, I have to take some developer exams. And this brings me to this. Last week, the conference, the folks at Wiley had some books out. Our book is not out yet. I'll talk about that in a minute. But this one is. So I grabbed me a copy of Professional SharePoint 2013 Development. A bunch of guys in here. Reza, Brendan Schwartz, Matt Rentlet, Scott Hillier, Brian Wilson, Jeff Fried, Paul Swider, all buddies of mine are in that. So I've been reading through this because it's kind of interesting stuff. Always learn stuff when I talk to my developer buddies. So that's going to be one of my later exams. But the folks at Wiley were there, and we were pimping out Shane and Steve and I's new book, Professional SharePoint 2013 Administration. That so I was the last holdout. Every chapter is turned in now, and I think all of the all of the author reviews and all that kind of stuff is almost in. I think I've got one chapter yet they haven't sent me back, but then that will be done. We've turned in the front matter. We've done our PDF page reviews, all that kind of stuff. So this thing is really close to being buttoned up and getting out into your hands. So you can pre-order a copy on Amazon, and the folks at Wiley are watching that, so they know that there's excitement brewing over the book. I think that's only because nobody's actually read it yet. I think that's probably part of it. But you can go out there and pre-order that, and then Amazon will ship you a copy just as soon as they can get their grubby little hands on it. Tim in the chat room is asking when it will be available to download on BitTorrent. I'm guessing about 30 seconds after we get the PDF to proofread. That would be my guess. And also, don't say cool, Tim. No, that's not cool. But there will be DRM-free versions of the PDF available also, so you can get it on the Kindle, you can get it on PDF. I will also be selling signed copies on my website, so be looking for a link to that on toddclint.com eventually when I get a hold of that. It looks like Rackspace might specially print some Rackspace versions of the book that are plastered with Rackspace logos. I might get those depending on how much they cost me. So these books are pretty heavy. These little buggers are like 3 or 4 pounds, and the mail service wants a lot of money to ship those around. So depending on what they cost for me and all that, I'll be selling those on my blog. So keep an eye out for that. But order it from Amazon, order it from me. I'm good either way. If you want to sign one, I'm happy to sign it, and I will write horrible, terrible, mean, nasty, but true things about Shane on it. All right, so already talked about SP TechCon in Boston in August. Also going to be at TechEd North America and TechEd Europe. Both of those are in June. TechEd North America is in New Orleans the first week of June, and TechEd Europe is in Madrid the third or fourth week of June. So far, for sure, I'm going to be doing a pre-conference session on SharePoint, and then hopefully they will be announcing the regular conference speakers later. They haven't done that yet. For all I know, I'm only doing the one session, the pre-con. But TechEd's a great conference. It's Microsoft all over, and so if you do Windows and Exchange, Link, and SharePoint, it's all that kind of stuff. Tim in the chat room is asking how much SharePoint is at TechEd. That varies year to year, and since we don't know what breakout sessions are there, nobody knows yet. Some years SharePoint gets a lot of sessions, some years it doesn't. I don't know right now, so I can't say. But they should hopefully be talking about that pretty soon. So TechEd will be great. I don't know if Rackspace will have a booth there. We might not, but we'll be doing book signings and that kind of stuff. I mean, the whole gamut. Since it's on a Monday, I'm going to end up finding a place somewhere to do my Netcast. But if you're going to be there, you got to find me. You got to say, hey, we got to hang out. That'll be great. So thanks, everybody. I ran over. And so I guess Tim in the chat room is asking, so somebody's asking, am I doing the SharePoint developer talks? No, I'm not. Thank you very much. Right now, all I know that I'm doing is a pre-conference session, so like a full-day SharePoint administrator thing. We submitted a bunch of other sessions for breakout sessions. They haven't announced those yet, so I don't know how many of those that I'm doing, if any. But I did submit a bunch. So as soon as I know and as soon as I can say, I'll let you guys know. So, all right, everybody. Well, I'm going to sign off for the night. Thanks, everybody in the chat room. Thanks to all the live viewers. You guys are great. I will try to get this one out and get all caught up before the end of this week so that I'm not behind next week when I start. So, thanks, everybody, and I will chat with you next week. Bye.